Drink beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. In this video I'll be discussing the great pitching rate debate that is surrounding Kveik in recent times. Let's start now with the backstory. For hundreds of years Kveik has been used in farms in Norway. The Norwegians are smart people, hence why they are the owners of the largest bank account in the world. So I think we can be confident that after having such a long history with their own yeast, that they know it rather well by now, with information being passed down throughout the generations. The general consensus among the farmers, the breweries and the homebrew public here in Norway these days is that in general Kveik thrives much better as an underpitch when compared to normal yeast pitching rates. This would of course vary as there are many different types, but the pitching rate is quite consistent all the same. With some Kveik types, pitching too much can have an adverse reaction, but of course not in all. There are of course a great deal of different types. As many people see it, why pitch more when less will do the same job? No point wasting it, especially if you've paid money for it. As far as many Norwegian Kveik users are concerned, Kveik is a yeast that originates from a farm and it is multi-strain. It will most likely have other elements to it also other than just yeast, and this is all part of what makes it Kveik and not simply just yeast. When commercial Kveik isolates became available from yeast labs, it came with a mixed reaction here in Norway. Kveik simply means yeast in Old Norwegian. There is no copyright on the word Kveik, so it can be used freely by anybody, or for that matter any business. There is obviously quite a large difference between a collection of strains of yeast that have mutated together over many years naturally, and an isolate of this, or even a mix of lab-born isolates that have been put together in a mix. Now, I am not saying that Kveik isolates are a bad thing. Far from it. I have tried a great number of these now and I've been very happy with the results. But as reported previously, the types I have tried have been best as an underpitch, just like with farm Kveik. I have also had a huge amount of messages from people who have had very bad results due to simply using a Kveik isolate like normal yeast. Many of these have not just used the normal pouch, they've actually made a starter for it, resulting in a huge overpitch. It is fair to say that for some types you can simply pinch the entire pouch and the end result will be fine. Trouble is though, this is a total waste of yeast, and I do wish that yeast companies would not just use the same packaging advice for all of their yeast, including their isolate Kveik. I have been vocal about this before now, and I guess it was to be expected that I would get a reaction at some point. In early November 2019, Escarpment Laboratories, who are based in Canada, put out an article about the impact of pitch rate on Kveik ferments. Before I go into this, I want to make it absolutely crystal clear that I do have the greatest respect for Richard Priest. He has done much fantastic work with Milk the Funk Wiki alongside Dan Pixley, and in general makes a great contribution, but I do feel that what Richard and his colleague did here was very questionable indeed. So let's go through it. The article put out by this laboratory begins by asking this simple question, and then goes on to explain that many brewers are becoming disillusioned when they try Kveik due to a lack of knowledge. I am in agreement so far, but I do believe that the labs are actually partly to blame for this. But this article then went on to show a study where it compared their lab isolated Kveik in various forms, as well as their Vermont owl yeast with 3 different pitch rates. For some strange reason, these tests were not performed at the temperatures the isolate Kveik was best suited for, but at a mere 20 degrees C. Then came the part of this article that really got my attention, as shown on screen now. So apparently a Kveik myth has now been debunked. Now don't get me wrong, it could be that this finding is correct. My main gripe has always been that you simply do not need to pitch anywhere near the rate that many of these yeast labs are advising. But even so, I believe that this testing is in no way equipped or adequate to make such a very bold and general statement that is pointing itself at Kveik en masse. Let me explain further. Firstly, I do not see that this lab-grown isolated cleaned up yeast is actually full Kveik anyway. It's fair to say that it is related to Kveik, but not the same thing at all. Secondly, if you're going to study a yeast in regards to pitching rate, then I feel it would be the most common sense to do this at the actual temperatures that this works best at and is commonly used at. Otherwise it becomes somewhat off point. It's rather like a car manufacturer basing its motorway mile per gallon score based on driving done at 2/3 or less of a motorway speed limit. Thirdly, I do not see how doing a test of a few different types of lab-isolated Kveik is enough to draw conclusions on Kveik on mass scale. After all, there are over 50 different types of farm Kveik listed on the registry, plus a rapidly expanding catalogue of commercial Kveik that is in different forms. This would be like if fermenters did a test with a handful of their yeast types and declared that the results are true of all types of yeast. To say that this is one myth debunked is simply crazy. All this testing proves is how these particular yeast types handle pitching rate at low temperatures. I do note though that the testing does fully back up that a lower pitching rate can be clearly used with the same final gravity outcome, which was my whole point all along. I did discuss this pitching rate with Richard Priest and he acknowledged it. He also agreed with me that the pitching rate should be changed for their Kveik pouches and confirmed that they will do this on the next print run, so all is well that ends well. Full respect to Richard for making this change. Let's hope that other yeast labs do the same. I have included a link to this article in this video's description. Then just recently, also in November 2019, the guys at Brülosophy did some testing of their own as a reaction to Richard's tests. Brülosophy made no wild claims about their testing, thankfully, stating that the test was just relative to this one particular yeast, not Kveik in mass scale. Their testing was done with imperial yeast, Lokia A43, which is an isolate of Voss Jana's Kveik. Brülosophy also pleased me by saying that Lokia is a Voss variant. Quite right. So again, not really Kveik in its true form, but a slice of it at least. To quickly illustrate this, Loki has an alcohol tolerance of just 10%, whereas the full multi-strain version can easily cope with 15%. Quite a big difference. Brülosophy tested an underpitch using advice from Lars Garsol, who if you're not familiar is somewhat an authority on Kveik, and the second sample used the pitching rate advised by Imperial. This amounted to approximately 18 billion cells in the underpitch compared to a whopping 220 billion cells in the standard pitch. Pretty huge difference for sure. The end result was beer that was reported to be way more similar than they were different. Both beers were equally enjoyable, and the writer finished off by saying that he will be definitely getting a bit more mileage out of each pouch he uses in the future. The hope here is that firstly Imperial yeast will see these results and will also correct their pitching advice after they've run their own tests. Secondly, that this will also get noticed by other yeast labs out there who have their own Kveik related products. If you are using any type of Kveik, be it the full multi-strain farm Kveik or simply isolates, then I suggest that you do your own research. This could simply be checking the internet for discussion or videos that relate to this particular yeast, or by running your own tests for comparison. It is vital to understand that saying all Kveik in all forms will be the same is just as clear an error as suggesting that all ale or lager yeast is also the same. If you would like to continue this debate, then please do so within the video's comments section, or simply head over to this channel's Facebook group. All I ask as usual is that this is done maturely and reasonably. This now brings this video to a close. If you have any questions, then please let me know via YouTube or Facebook. I do hope that you found this video to be useful, interesting and enjoyable. If appropriate, then please like this video on YouTube, and if you've not done so already, then please subscribe. I regularly post new content. Happy brewing!